Good afternoon again, and welcome to the July John Cain Luncheon here at Graduate House at the University of Melbourne. I'm Emma Dawson, as always, your host, Executive Director at Per Capita. Lovely to see so many of you here today, and I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are gathered on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank them for their custodianship of the lands on which we meet, which were never ceded. This lunch, this is the biggest group we've ever had, I think. How exciting. And we've got about another 75 people online. So there's obviously a lot of interest in rebuilding the public square, which is fantastic news for those of us that care about it, which should be all of us. I'm going to introduce now Peter Lewis, who is a good friend at Per Capita. He's the director and the founder of the Centre of the Public Square, which we launched earlier this week. This is actually our official launch. And of course, a director of Essential Media and a board member at Per Capita, and my very good friend. Please make him welcome.
Thanks, Emma. I'll just try to rig myself up so that it works for everyone. How's that, Rebecca? Look, starting off, I'd also like to pay my respects to any First Nations people in the room and acknowledge their custodianship of this land for many millennia. Look, thank you, John Cain regulars, for having me along. Emma was a little bit worried you aren't a tech crowd, so I want to reassure you this is not a talk about technology, it's a talk about power and politics, and I know that's right in your hitting zone. Thanks also to those who bought a ticket even when I told you I was launching my manifesto. Thanks for those who accepted a freebie in my desperation to fill the room. I see you all. And a special shout out to those joining us virtually. I know it's difficult when you're not in the room, but we're going to try to make this a great event for you as well. So over the next hour, I'm going to ask you all to earn your rubber chicken. I want you to help me step out my thinking about how we might imagine our public square differently, test drive some of the new approaches I've been developing, give me some honest feedback on where I'm up to, and work out if there's somewhere interesting we can take this. So, those who know me know how much I love a QR code. If you need a hand, we've got a few tech angels, Chris and Mayank on either side of the room. You know, normally on these events we say put your phones away. I'm saying pull them out. Let me know when you're in there by hitting the thumbs up. I'll give it a few minutes. There's also a questions button which you can enter at any stage. One of the things we're hoping to get out of this is a bank of FAQs that we can reflect on at the end of the event. While you're all logging in, maybe I'll frame up today's discussion. So, like everyone in the room, I'm coming at this from my own personal perspective, which is actually a whole lot of different and sometimes contradictory perspectives. I'm a net migrant, a proud member of Generation X, the only place where I see the world from a minority perspective. I'm a social researcher, a political strategist and a spin doctor. I'm a writer, a podcaster, a bloviator. I'm a socialist who also happens to be a capitalist, or is that a capitalist socialist? I'm a father, a husband, a cook, a cricketer, a Swans fan. I'm passionate about First Nations justice, disability rights, worker power, the future of live music, the renewable energy industry, the power of big tech, and social democracy. But while I'm all these things that are particular to me, there is also something I share with all of you. I'm a citizen. And I've decided to focus my activism around this part of my identity because I think this is the space where we face our biggest challenges and also where our greatest hope lies. But before I set forth with all my wisdom, I'm actually interested in your views. In your phone, I want you to tell me three things. How satisfied are you with the following? Democracy, the federal parliament, and the state of our political debate. Let's have a look at what people give us. Oh, no one's in there yet. Come on, people. Oh, somebody's very happy with it. So sorry, just to be clear, 5 is very dissatisfied, 1 is very satisfied. So if you think everything's great, give us a 1. If you think everything's going to the dogs, give us a 5. Give it a couple of seconds. If you're zooming in, or I think it's streaming in, and you've got any issues, there should be some links in the YouTube chat as well, so please use that, our virtual friends. So where have we landed? We think democracy is kind of okay. We think federal, everything's past the meridian, isn't it? So, no, they're beyond. So if 2.5 is line ball, democracy's a bit down, federal parliament's a bit worse, and political debate is even worse. So we'll give that a couple of minutes. We've had most of you give us... I think it's interesting. So one of the things when you have these discussions, let's start with what people think, and then let's compare it with whether we are all freaks or whether we're in line with the general public. So we asked the same questions in this week's Guardian Essential Report, and you can see it's probably, I don't know, it's a slightly different scale, but what was interesting, on democracy, it's kind of line ball. So on the left, we've got very satisfied, 38. We've got about, I can't even add that up now, 32 in the dissatisfied camp and the rest in the middle. But the closer you get to the things where it connects with people, federal parliament, much more dissatisfaction, political debate, even more. So on democracy, media and political debate, I think we all agree we're not doing so well. Maybe not yet the enfeebled but incendiary democracy the United States has become, but it would be naive to think we are immune from this trajectory. So, democracy, parliament, political debate are all aspects of the broader concept which I'm calling the public square. And I want to sort of get my definition straight before we go much further. So, what is the public square? Like all concepts worth their salt, the public square has a German compound. Habermas coined it Öffentlichkeit, the bridge between state and people anchored in shared opinion. In the 1970s, Benedict Anderson gave this a sharper edge, describing an imaginary community of stories and song lines that bind people in what he called deep horizontal comradeship. The public square is the spaces between us, the norms, the values, the mutual understanding that makes us a society. It's the campfire where our forebears sat looking at the stars and seeing gods on celestial quests. It's the Athenian agora where citizens drew lots. It's the cathedral at Worms where Luther posited his thesis. It's the coffee shops of Paris where revolution was fermented. It's the speaker corner where a citizen could stand up on their soapbox and let it rip. And it's the shared media experience of McLuhan's global village, from wireless to TV to the early iterations of the internet. It's anywhere citizens build a shared response of their world and have the means to shape their collective response. Look, I don't want to idealise this space. It was also been defined by its exclusion of slaves, those without property, women, First Nations people, immigrants, the other. It's where witches were tortured and the guillotine blade fell, where books were burned and communists banned, where the White Australia policy was hatched and illegal asylum seekers weaponised. So the public square has always been a negotiated construct anchored around three core elements: how we make decisions based on the principle of collective will, how we inform ourselves to make these decisions, separating fact from rumour and giving context to the nuance in the grey areas, and critically, how we connect with each other, not just as individuals, but through our social connections, what J.K. Galbraith coined countervailing power. Clusters of citizens in unions, churches, chambers of commerce, progress associations that brought welcome friction to the parliamentary process. So, what is the nature of the problem? My argument is our public square is in structural crisis because it's become the site of constant conflict rather than a point of connection, which was what it was designed to be. I think this is the inevitable consequence of what Shoshana Zuboff dubs surveillance capitalism. Our online lives are controlled by massive global digital advertising platforms that extract, repurpose and sell our attention to the highest bidder in real-time micro-auctions. We know that the largest of these, Meta, has knowingly built engagement algorithms that seek to maximise time on platform by prioritising content that reinforces users' existing views, excites and riles them up, and preferences emotion over reason. When these tools are used to sell us sneakers, it's creepy and irritating. When they are used to trade in ideas and values, it becomes corrosive. Look, to be clear, conflict is not bad. Political division is neither new nor undesirable. Conflict is the energy that has driven social change from female suffrage to land rights to marriage equality. Union organising has always been based around the theory of anger, hope, action. Friction in any system is important because it draws out much needed complexity. Technologist Robert Elliott Smith calls this the edge of chaos. Evolution was never survival of the fittest, he argues, but survival of those with the diversity and redundancy to deal with unforeseen events. What has changed, I argue, is our underlying civic infrastructure. Look, think of it like a cricket pitch. Is the wicket true and fair to both sides, or is it being doctored to elicit a certain outcome? Our civic pitch feels like a Gabba green top, destined to pepper the batter with unplayable balls which even the bowlers can't control. Corrosive hyper-conflict has become a feature, not a bug, undermining any sense of common purpose in politics, in media and in our social connections. When we start at the point of conflict, we fail to see the humanity in each other. We cast moral judgment on those with different views, and we seek not just to win a debate, but to humiliate our opponents, and they do the same to us. The victories we do achieve also become ephemeral because they rely on the outcome of the contest rather than a product of genuine consensus. There's nothing novel in my prognosis. It's gone from a fringe critique just a few years ago into the mainstream. Murdoch attacks Meta with no sense of irony as a Scrooge to democracy. The Prime Minister calls for young people to be banned from social media. The E-Safety Commissioner takes Elon Musk to court for refusing to take down content. You know, what surprises me the most is that we think that passing a few laws and a bit of self-regulation will fix anything. Getting tough on big tech by trying to limit its power inevitably means ceding to it as well. It misses the point that the fundamental problem is structural. The ownership of networks concentrated in the hands of a few billionaires, the business models to extract and exploit our attention, and the very assumption that large, centrally controlled global networks can ever act in the public interest. The public square has become a private global mall, and I believe the only rational response is to fundamentally reimagine it. So I want to stop for a sec because this is a lot, right? If anyone's got a hot take, put it in their phone. I'm interested if anyone, I just want to break this up and get people the chance to reflect as we go. So any hot takes there you can share with anyone. Zero responses at the moment. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to hit the great man Francis Leach for a hot take because he's been prepared earlier. Yeah, just grab the phone. And for those streaming, I know you can't see Francis, but he's very attractive.
You know that I'm very much aligned with your thoughts on all of this. But I think that the one thing that's missing from what's been said is that why has the public square been made vulnerable to the incursion of tech and commodified in a way in what I call the industry of anger and the industry of provocation, which is where the money is made and how the algorithms work? Well, I would argue that it's the economy as well. That if people had good, secure work, if people were invested in their communities and felt that they had a stake in their lives and had control over their lives in a way that they don't in sort of late-stage capitalism we're currently living in, that they would be less inclined to find space and community in these online forums and these online spaces where they're exploited and the algorithms of anger continually ramp up the conflict in a way that isn't healthy. In the public space, we have, a sense that we have a shared goal and shared values, even if we have different political ideas. And so the very notion of in America it's contested right now, the idea of a peaceful transfer of power. It was amazing to sit there and watch the British do that, and everyone sort of go, oh my God, they had a peaceful transfer of power. How did they do that? Which has been going on forever, but we've taken it for granted. It's now in play because of the situation we find ourselves in, where communities no longer feel connected to one another, no longer feel secure, no longer feel that they've got a stake in the continuity of our institutions and our economy that they now gravitate to these communities where they find like-minded people and are exploited, and that's why we are in a situation we are in now. It's the economy, stupid.
That's a great landing. And look, I better not have two mics going at once. And there's some great comments coming through here. The sporting analogy, which is something I wrote about yesterday, that we regard politics like a sport. We cheer for our side, we boo the opposition, where we should think about it more like community sport, where we're all exercising and having a drink afterwards. So there's some great feedback coming through there, which I will all capture. This is all part of my cunning plan to extract ideas out of you. Anyone else got a hot take before we move on? We've probably got a couple more. Frank can roll it around. Happy to keep moving otherwise. All right. Because I know I'm going to run out of time, because you know when you time a speech and you're doing it as a scan. So this is, we're about on time though, we're about a quarter time now, so we can have some oranges. So, look, the civility, so over the past few years I've been thinking through how our civic life might be conducted differently with a project I've been calling Civility. The Civility framework has 3 layers, but the town hall, which we're thinking through live, virtual hybrid events like this, deploying interactive tools and deliberative methodologies to give people a genuine say. Then you've got the town square, an independent space of diverse, self-managing communities to share ideas informed by high-quality information. And then the citizens. The citizenship, a user-controlled citizen platform where people exercise, engage and express themselves as citizens. I'd like to take you through each of these concepts briefly. So first, the town hall. Look, let's be honest. Our current models of member meetings, stakeholder engagements and community consultations, even events like this, have one thing in common. They tend to be a bit of a punish. We've all been to them, the party meetings, the community consults, the bloody writers' festivals. They tend to be the technocratic and emotionally charged, so participants are either bored or agitated, and sometimes both at the same time. Those on stage talk at the room and you're cast as a passive audience. If there's time for questions, they normally take the form of speeches from those who you least want to hear from. Present company accepted, right? Everyone goes home not really knowing what anyone else thought or what to do next. So the way we're thinking through civility is as an alternate model. We start with the point of connection. We provide clear and concise information. We embrace fiction. We try to make it fun. We use the tools we're using today to design events around this real-time feedback. Look, there's nothing special about the tech. Menti is just a tool developed by a Swedish management consultant. So Civility isn't an app, it's a methodology. And I want to talk to you about a few ways we've been testing it. Look, first we had the privilege of working with Yes23 to design and roll out their education activation work for the referendum. We designed a town hall in a box, a show which toured the nation. Francis was one of the MCs, with a team of skilled MCs, of course Francis was a skilled MC, expert panels and real-time audience feedback. To build the emotional connection, we started the event with a First Nations person reading the statement from the heart, and then we asked people to reflect. So before you got to the points of controversy, you tried to create the point of connection. The next thing we did was explain the changes using easy to understand infographics. And here I want to shout out to one of the legends of the disability rights movement, Catherine McAlpine, CEO of Inclusion Australia. The best bit of comms we did in the Voice campaign was putting the statement from the heart into easy read. Not because it worked for people with intellectual disability, but because it worked for everyone. It became accessible. After that, we'd acknowledge the criticism up front and respond respectfully and clearly. Then we'd chart a way forward for those who wanted to commit. I know, we lost the referendum and that is an ongoing shame for all of us, but we learned a lot about creating a safe and rewarding discussion for those who are prepared to turn up. A second piece of work has been around the disability dialogue, a project to centre collaborative power outside government. Led by people with disability, working in partnership with advocacy organisations, good faith providers, and the Melbourne Disability Institute here at Melbourne Uni, with the support of Kirsten Dean, who's a great friend of the project. Using these tools, we've run a pilot to reimagine disability housing. We started with getting the different groups into their own huddles, We gave each group specific design challenges and then brought the groups together to refine and endorse each other's ideas. Not all of them got through, and that was okay because people had faith in the process. Those that did were then taken forward to the NDIS review, where one idea, rental navigators, was adopted as a recommendation. What worked here was the shift in power. Rather than government consulting at groups about policies that had already been determined, the power was inverted, and the recommendations came to government from a united community. In this project, we also learnt the importance of embracing real accessibility, both in the way projects are paced and the way information is presented so that everyone can participate. Do you want to give Kirsten the mic just for a quick hot take on what we learnt from that? Sorry to put you in the middle of it, but again, more voices is better than mine.
The bit that most people don't know about the National Disability Insurance Scheme is that it was an idea that came from outside of government. It actually came from people with disability, their families and providers. And they were the ones who took that idea to government. And then what happened, once we had this kind of amazing idea, what happened behind the scenes was people with disability, families and providers all got together. And traditionally in Australia, they had never worked before. In fact, there was a fair degree of hostility between all of them. But they agreed to put that aside and say, look, the NDIS is the thing that we all agree on, and let's prosecute that case with government and with the public. And so two really important lessons from, perhaps arguably one of the largest social and economic policy reforms of the last couple of decades. It was an idea that came from outside of government, and so people had got together, created this sense of countervailing power, worked on an idea and then took it to government. And the second thing is, you only get those sorts of things if you get your shit together and get organised and work together and prosecute that case with government and with the public. And so one of the lessons of what's happened post the NDIS is that shared sense of common purpose and everybody working together for lots of different reasons. Once the NDIS got up, that dissipated and everybody kind of retreated to their collective corners and prosecuted once again their own case with government and with the public. So one of the reasons that I'm really interested in working with Pete and with Catherine on the disability dialogue is to bring those partners together and say, there are wicked problems facing people with disability and their families in this country, and people are not able to realise their fundamental human rights, and they are marginalised and excluded. And if we are ever going to change that picture, it's got to be us working together to prosecute that again.
Thanks, Kirsten. I want to talk about one more wicked area of policy, which is the renewable energy transition. We've been doing quite a bit of work with the team led by Harriet around social licence. So some of you may be aware of the pushback of the rollout of renewables in regional communities, the wind, solar and a grid upgrade, particularly in coastal communities. Our instinct, I think, is to dismiss those who are opposed as denialists and cookers who the fossil fuel industry is ruthlessly exploiting. But the truth is that to the extent disinformation, offshore wind kills whales, is a thing, it's taken hold because it's latching onto real concerns. There are large-scale projects, many of which have been terribly managed by the developers. The first most communities hear about them is when the locals start protesting. There is a genuine concern for the impact of these big developments on nature, especially in coastal communities. The second problem is those pushing the change are those least trusted, the energy companies. The only trusted source, we're told, are friends and family. But if all we trust are our friends and the family, then how do any of us get information? So if we want the energy transition to work, it's pretty clear we need to upend the power dynamic. Rather than imposing projects on community buy-in has to come first. This takes work. It's not a one-off procedural consult to comply with technocratic frameworks. It's processes designed to give communities real agency in setting the ground rules for the future. I don't know, Paul, who's with ACF, has got any hot takes on that, but he's been out there trying to ride that wild pony. It'd be interesting to hear from you, Paul.
Yeah, g'day, Paul Sinclair from Australian Conservation Foundation. Thanks, Peter, for inviting me. The renewable energy rollout, as Peter's described, is a real flashpoint in regional Australia and a heap of other areas. We're really at the start because of a decade of doing sweet FA. So, you know, to be a renewable energy superpower, we've got to push out about 25,000 k's of energy transmission lines. We're halfway to 5,000 k's, right? This issue is not going away. It is being used as an issue to mobilise folks on the right. It's about being used as an issue to mobilise folks who are opposed to the speed and scale of renewable energy and want to maintain coal gas and push into nukes. That's a big problem, and that's going to grow as we move to the Queensland state election and the federal election that's coming up. It is also true that there are genuine problems with the way renewable energy is being rolled out. Some of the mapping that we're doing with Melbourne Uni is showing that in some areas, you know, about 50% of proposed projects are getting rolled out in high conservation value areas in southeast Queensland. It's a big problem. There is something real there that we have to tackle, and the issue is going to get bigger, not smaller over time. So one of the reasons I like hanging out with this guy is the way we have to challenge a bunch of orthodoxies. Myself, as a dyed-in-the-wool tree hugger and fish lover, the way that I approach issues is being challenged and turned on its head. We've opposed a whole bunch of developments. That's the history of the environment movement. Yeah. And we have to reimagine ways of supporting projects that are going to stop the planet cooking. Developers need to think about nature differently. They need to make visible what has been invisible, which is the value of nature to our lives and our community. And that's got to get turned on its head. Where I come from, you know, the hierarchy of decision making is, you know, people, sheep, nature. That has to bloody turn around. We have to think about the way nature is a fundamental part of our communities and well-being. So that means pushing into the area of triple dividends, and this is where the public square comes in. How do we have conversations in communities that improve nature, that improve community benefit, economic and otherwise, and get the renewable stuff built?
Thanks, Paul. A big apologies to those streaming. We've just been told that the roving mic is not being picked up, so you're just seeing me nodding to Fuzz. So when I call other people up, I'm going to actually ask them to come up like it's school assembly and make their contributions there. But look, let's move on. Let's talk. So look, if we say we can do our civic engagement better, what about the town square? I don't think it's enough to design better public engagements. These only work with a citizenry acting on good information, open to new ideas and nuance. It's here we move to the town square, which is the public forum where ideas are circulated. Right now, the custodians of our square are struggling. The news media that emerged from the industrial age of information scarcity served the critical role of gatekeeper of relevant, quality assured information. This model is in catastrophic, possibly terminal decline. Major media companies and public broadcasters alike face falling audiences, loss of trust and growing irrelevance. Attempts to strike a grand bargain between media and the platforms via the News Media Bargaining Code may have given us a few years of life support, but they have only increased reliance on these untenable partners. And I must say, striking generative AI content deals with the same partners seems like making the same mistake all over again. Because after stripping media companies of their advertising income streams, the algorithmic distribution model distorts the very idea of a news service. News is broken down into individual pieces of content. The key value is virality rather than veracity. Conflict and excitement trump fact and context. Again, media has always been premised on conflict. If it bleeds, it leads is core to any journalist's DNA. But there is something more intense about the ferocity and fervour of the constant cycle of outrage, controversy and noise that the media feeds and feeds off. It creates this two-speed social discourse, a small active minority constantly angry while the vast majority actively recoil and disengage. Look, the journalists in the room can relax. We still need you to filter fact from fiction, but I think we need new models for collating, presenting and distributing this information. To go back to my Gabba metaphor, rather than gatekeepers, we need you to become greenkeepers. Professionals with the discipline to observe the world dispassionately and the skills to provide the context and nuance that tends the public square. Ironically, one of the best examples of the greenkeeper I've come across are the creators of the Final Word cricket podcast, Melbourne poet Geoff Lemon and former Gillard staffer Adam Collins. They travel the world following major matches, all formats, male and female, all nations. They report, they provide context, they champion diversity and challenge mindless nationalism. They study the game's history, conduct in-depth interviews, hold live events and organise meetups and even cricket matches. They make a living wage via a mix of Patreon subscribers, sponsors, lots of YouTube views from India. They've built a highly engaged, self-sustaining audience. Subscribers are invited into a closed Discord group, which is a gamers platform free of surveillance business models where they share their love for the game. The audience is real people, not data sets, and they've built a genuine self-sustaining community of interest around their passion. Look, there are other examples. Some of the women in the room might be aware of Annabelle Crabb and Lee Sales, Chat 10, Looks 3, which has built a community of care off the back of their wry takes on culture and life. Dan Illich's Irrational Affair, part comedy, part therapy, part mission to save the planet from itself. And the crooked media crew in the States, Democrat loyalists who are becoming an independent centre of gravity as the Biden presidency approaches endgame. Look, the best of these are information-driven community-building projects where the connection points of shared interest and passion are tapped to become something more consequential than simple eyeballs. But while these podcasters have occasional live shows, I reckon they are still primarily broadcasters. The content and the audience remain separate entities. I think we can take the greenkeeper model to the next level by building on some of the hacks we performed during the pandemic. When we locked down, we started convening daily lunchtime Zoom talks, a series we dubbed Australia at Home, in an attempt to keep people engaged and connected. Zoom seems old now, but at the time it was a revelation. Hundreds of people in the same online space, taking in the same information and sharing back through chat, driving the discussion. Tuesday, we did the Essential Report where I'd geek out on politics. We ran virtual book clubs for Guardian Australia, and we started a discussion about technology with what's become the Burning Platforms podcast. These live interactive events, I think, have the potential to become a new form of media, and I think the model we use with Burning Platforms might provide a good framework. We've got a regular panel, my friend Digital Right Watchers Lizzie O'Shea, who's up the back there, and our tech bro Dan Stinton. And look, Lizzie, I reckon if we just had our relationship on Twitter, we'd probably hate each other, but because we found a place where we could discuss and bring out the best in ourselves, here we are. We each bring a provocation to put to each other, we do a bit of research and test each other's assumptions. We dive deep with an expert who knows a lot more than us. We ask questions, test each other, look for the nuance, and we have fun. With a modest audience, these can become live interactive events delivered to engaged communities who know that their feedback will be seen and heard. So do you get the concept? Like event-based engagement. This gets a bit cryptic now. So this is going back to my multiple identities. Imagine building these sorts of conversations across all identities, ideas and passions we have as citizens. Local town squares, where neighbourhoods can distill and deliberate on community issues. Life stage town squares, centred around different parts of our journey, parenting, active retirement, ageing. Lifestyle town squares, from book clubs and music clubs to gardening and cooking forums to sports communities. Specialist town squares, professional networks to cultural identities and political causes. Imagine if every night a range of town squares were available to be streamed live as an alternate to the Netflix algorithm. The audience invited to shape the direction of the discussion rather than just be passive viewers. Each community run by professional and committed community journalists, building their careers around their knowledge and their trust of their networks. Now, we could build a Marvel universe of content communities interacting. You know, the drum might be gone, but maybe we can reimagine the square. God knows, we've got a month of panellists in this room. So who'd run the square? Well, when I first started thinking about this, it seemed obvious this is a natural role for an ABC founded on the Rethian principles of civic reciprocity. But the blank stares I got when I raised this with Auntie and its ongoing crisis and identity makes me think that's a bridge too far. Maybe this is more like a community media model, the existing network of community-run radio and TV stations that exist to serve specific audiences. Maybe it's an extension of the terrific work of the team at The Conversation, dedicated to giving academics the skills to tell stories grounded in fact. Maybe it's a network of titles supported by organisations with an interest in building their own communities of engaged members. Or maybe it's a cooperative of community journalists like Adam and Jeff with a shared back end to help repurpose and amplify their content. And it doesn't need to just be one model, it could be all of the above. What I do know is the current models are failing, and each new media play based on a fresh iteration of the obsolete gatekeeper is likely to fail as well. So if I had the roving mic, I'd send it up to Misha now, but because we're running time, I might call you up at the end if that's okay. Let's talk about the last bit, the citizenship. Look, let's look at the way we connect with each other through the current platforms that purport to be our public space. X is a bonfire, Meta is purging news, TikTok may or may not be a tool of state influence, Instagram promotes performative self-loathing, YouTube is riddled with wormholes, and LinkedIn, despite my best efforts, is still cringe. Cory Doctorow, jarringly brutal phase in shitification has become a law of network technology. Does everyone know what shitification is? First, a network works for its users. Then it works for the businesses that advertise on the platform and exploits the users. Then it works for the platform and exploits the businesses. Then it dies. Is there a world where the global corporate digital platforms will all turn to shit? And if an Overton window opened, what would emerge next? Could we begin to imagine a new digital home for our civic selves, where citizens get used to engaging with each other through fact-based discussion and deliberation, in forums that respect them and seek their feedback, where we could deploy a sort of digital Dunkirk and move to safer territory? There was a moment when Twitter turned X, but all there was Mastodon. Did anyone try it? Way too hard. Can we ensure that next time a platform shitifies, we're ready? An interoperable network of local interest and lifestyle-based communities could provide the common ground for the connections with the global platforms have already shown they cannot responsibly manage, where users could choose the communities they join, their level of engagement, the amount of information they choose to share, where they could collaborate to set the norms and rules for each community, where there would be roles for community development workers to moderate content and direct discussion, where members would be valued on terms defined by their communities and judged on effort and time invested in helping others rather than their accumulation of followers and likes. These community networks could produce the most valuable commodity on the internet, high-quality, permission-based insights to inform the design of policies, products, and the network themselves. There are a range of initiatives that could be piloted to test the feasibility of such a self-sustaining network. We could imagine research panels where government, business and other orgs access members of the community to participate. They could become a base for civic research where academics and policymakers test evolving models of deliberative democracy. They could become an avenue for the delivery of government services, the navigators that we've been talking about with the NDIS. We could even imagine a digitally organic marketplace of ethical products such as human-generated cultural content as a healthy alternative to the AI slop. A longer-term opportunity for these networks could be to work with technologists currently trying to build better models of data sovereignty. Internet founder Tim Berners-Lee's solid protocol to define a user-centric model of storing and sharing data in pods. The not-for-profit led by former ICANN chief Paul Toomey advocating for a data commons where our data is seen a bit like the way our savings are seen through superannuation. And the work of former Taiwanese Digital Minister Audrey Tang, who sees a more radical shift in digital power to communities, using blockchain technology to give decentralised community the tools to develop their own rules, their own norms, and their own incentive structures. But the big idea here is our citizenship could become a civic sandpit for a broader mission to civilise the internet. So you step back and we see a bit of a reimagined public square. And what is most striking to me is the way the three constructs are mutually reinforcing. Where our current model of democracy, media and civic engagement is fractured, this seems more unified. The information flows up and down, it's high quality, it's intermittent but deep, data is controlled by the audiences, partnerships built on reciprocity. So let's pause again, and I want you to tell me which of these three ideas you'd prioritise. Which do you think should have the most attention? I'm going to give you each 100 points, and you can allocate it against any of the three areas. You can put it all in a single bucket, share them evenly, or weight your preferences. This is what's known as quadratic voting. It's the sort of logic blockchain technology is based around, processing not just the binary options, but more complex allocation of preferences. Who's given all their dough to the town hall? Most of it. Who gave it to the town square? So it's kind of, everyone's hedging their bits a bit away. I don't think you can put 33 and a third points in anything, so something's going to win. We'll give this a couple more minutes. Sorry, this is not so exciting for the people at home, but everyone's hard on their phone, and I hope you are too. Oh, we had about 50 people answer. Those whose phones have run out of battery can talk to me later. So a little bit more on citizenship, probably because that's interesting actually. I thought that would come last because it's the big idea. But you know, you're telling me that they're all worth going with, although there will be a more binding vote in a little while. So this is where today's drama takes a little twist. You see the dog's eating my homework. I did bash out 10,000 words over summer, which I dubbed a manifesto, but it was really a bunch of messages to self, which I then inflicted on a bunch of kind souls for feedback, and you were all very polite. But my friend Paul Schroeder displayed some welcome civility when he gently remarked it was a bit condescending, I think were the words, Paul. He's right. Our challenge is way beyond one document and plan. And to think a middle-aged white guy would come up with the solution is downright arrogant. The truth is this is big and complex and requires our collective wisdom and action. There isn't one solution, but many people that can build, many projects that can build on each other, that are independent but interoperable, based on the foundational principle of connection over conflict. And look, there are far deeper thinkers than me who can help us work this through. Start with my partner in crime, Lizzie O'Shea, and her great book, Future History, is a great entry point to the political dimensions of technology. Read the Irish writer Maria Farrell, whose wonderful essay, Rewilding the Internet, draws on ecological theory to make the case for digital devolution. There's the mighty Brian Merchant's Blood on the Machine, the inspiring story of the true industrial revolutionaries, the Luddites. And finally, I can't commend enough Audrey Tang and Glenn Wiles' Plurality, a truly collaborative book about breaking the binary and embracing the points of connection. You know, what's remarkable is all these people who think deeply at technology tend to arrive at the same conclusion. If we want to address the corrosive impact of big tech, it's not enough to regulate it. We need to reimagine it. Out of this, I do think there's the beginning of a game plan. Do not cede power of the distribution of our connections to global media platforms and their anger machines. Resist the model by breaking binaries, building bridges and crossing them. Demand more of government to go beyond the performative regulation of the status quo, starting with privacy law reform, not upgraded in 40 years, not good enough. Stop business as usual politics. We can't micro-target ourselves to social change. We need to build consensus from the ground up. Experiment. Embrace different ways of building community and partner with technologists who share our values. Turn up. Citizenship is a team sport, not one we should just barrack for our own side. We need to approach our civic life, as I said before, like community sport. Finally, let's tend the civic garden. Find new ways of expressing our humanity by singing songs, reading books, sharing time and ideas with others, coming to events, being in rooms with people. Okay, that isn't a manifesto, it's a 7-point plan, but we all love a 7-point plan. So, now it's time for you to pass judgment And I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone who I talk about with this conversation. Only this time you get to do it anonymously. Am I crazy? I'll give you a couple of minutes to pass judgment, and I am at your mercy. You've got 4 options here. No, let's get to work. Probably, but keep going. Maybe, come back to me when you've thought more about it. And yes, stick to your day job. Oh, I reckon I'm going to ask for the roving mics. I'm going to apologise for the people at home, but we'll send out the invite later. So, roving mic, Mayank, have it on. I want to start by asking Paul up the back what he voted.
Hello, I'm Paul up the back. I voted probably, but let's keep talking. You probably are crazy.
Yeah.
Which is why.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's why I arrived today.
Yeah.
I'm from Australian Super, and we work with Peter on how we think about the voice and interaction about that, and how we build knowledge and understanding about that. And I was trying to think about why that was important, and it's sort of come out in some of the things you've said, but I feel like everything you've talked about today would rely on everybody wants to be respected, everybody. And sometimes they go looking for that respect, so they go places that we wouldn't maybe want them to be, talking about stuff. Everybody wants to be valued, everybody wants to feel valuable, and nobody wants to be alone. And so I would just encourage you and us, it's actually not about the technology, it's about the people and how the technology could help us. But what was great about that voice experience was I saw people feel like it's okay I don't even know what the referendum is. It's okay that somebody cares more about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander or knows more about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander situation and rights than I do, but I'm coming to learn a bit more about that. I didn't feel judged when I came along, and I didn't know which way I was going to vote, say, if I was a person in that. So, to me, I said you're yellow, but I hope it's blue. But I think it's only going to happen.
I think it's more likely to be yellow.
I think it's so dependent on people respecting one another, valuing one another, and then not being alone.
Yeah. And just to round out that, it's like the structures at the moment work actively against that because it's constantly doing the opposite. Pass the mic to Lizzie. I want to know how you voted, Lizzie.
Thanks, Paul, from down the back. I'm Lizzie from the back as well. I actually voted no, let's do this, in part because I'm a digital rights advocate, so I spend a huge amount of time criticising government policy, failures to act on things like privacy reform, and it's immensely frustrating to see the potential of digital technology squandered in the hands of a small coterie of billionaires who are self-interested with no concept of social obligation or duty or the concept of building any kind of public space or spaces that might be a place to overcome social divides rather than places to foment them. And to that end, I like big thinking around how technology can be used in a positive sense to facilitate greater and more nuanced forms of deliberative democracy, because it's frustrating spending your whole time as a critic. Because partly I'm involved in this work because until we dismantle those power structures, we're not going to get, I think, meaningful solutions to the multiplicity of problems that we call climate change, or we're going to continue to see the creation of a democratic deficit. We're going to continue to see policies that exacerbate disadvantage and wealth inequality. So I think we need technology to be able to facilitate it. It's neither, as Kranzberg would say, inherently good nor bad, nor is it neutral. It's a tool that can be used to create better forms of democracy, but if we don't actively limit its capacity to make democracy worse, it will continue down that trajectory. And that requires, work that we do at Digital Rights Watch, criticising policy, but it also requires big thinking about pushing about the potential of technology to create that. I keep returning to the concept of civil...
Can you run the mic over to Misha up the back?
Civil assemblies like the one in Ireland, where power was actively referred by political the political body to a civil assembly for the purposes of deliberating on specific policy ideas, and then it would return for a public plebiscite, a referenda, and a set of referenda. And I think that kind of model, we do need, Mark Zuckerberg a few years ago slipped out that Facebook is more like a government than a corporation, and he never said it again because he realised that he'd made a mistake disclosing that publicly. And I think there's truth to that. So we need to, in fact, have governments do what governments do, which is find ways to include the public in their decision making that isn't consultation with the conclusion already in mind, that might involve ceding some power, that might involve finding ways to undermine the worst excesses of a bipartisan political system and create buy-in from the citizenship so that you don't get mass disenfranchisement that is currently being accelerated by technology. So there's things that government can do as one of the most powerful entities to counterweight the immense power of tech companies, in ways that return and empower citizens to be more active in public participation and democratic decision making. And that's the kind of approach I'd like to see from government, and then all sorts of work on the ground, the bottom up, to facilitate civic involvement. And I think it's really interesting that citizenship was the one that came up the most.
Yeah.
There's a sense that it should be bottom up, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out how to get to that path, but the bottom-up approach, I think, is the one that we need to follow. There's a bunch of things that the people at the top could also be doing to facilitate that in the here and now.
Thanks, Lizzie. I'm going to call Tony up to give the listeners at home also access to your hot take. We'll do one more quick hot take from Tony, Misha, and then I'll wrap the whole thing up so we're out by 2.
Thanks, Peter. Just 2 things I wanted to pick up. I vote that you're not crazy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
As a historian, if you like, of public squares and public spheres, I think we have to look at the battles of the past a bit and how they won. And one of them was utilising culture, songs, drama, film. And if we just think journalism and information, we're sort of falling into a bit of a trap. We need people think with their hearts as well, if that's not a paradox. So maximum Bernard Smith's idea that we're all artists and democratising the making of art, which leads me to the second point, which is the ABC. We own it. They might have given you those blank stares. They've been through Howard, Turnbull, Morrison, but that's not the problem. Began with Keating when we had an internal privatisation. And I'd make the point that it's not the ABC of the Charter, not the entity, particularly television and some of the other divisions. We own it already. The BBC in bloody Britain was made to decentralise. We actually, as citizens, can reform it as an agent in what you're talking about. And we have SBS, we have all of the public radio. I think public media and reimagining that sits, for me, at the centre of it, because we already own it. There's actually tricky legal funny things that we can do about that. We're used to being passive, and my God, I thought your manifesto was quite democratic and enlivening. The ABC is condescending, and I worked there for 10 years.
All right, I better keep it. Thanks, Tony. Look, finally, really quick from Misha, and then I'll round this out and let you guys get on with your day. Thanks, Misha. Leader of the conversation.
Okay, well, just to say, I think you're on the right track. These ideas are all excellent, and things certainly that I've been thinking about. There are definitely challenges there. I was interested in what you were saying about Benedict's and Anderson's idea about imagined societies, because I think one of the problems in this area is the role of the nation state. The fact that these big digital platforms, for example, that are making life very difficult are American companies that don't operate predominantly or only in Australia and don't owe things to the citizens of Australia, for example, that we are the sorts of things that we're talking about. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really talking about rebuilding the social fabric, which is a big job, and you can't do that just from the media end. But I think it's a great conversation, so thank you.
Great. Thanks, mate. Look, anyone's got anything else they want to share with it? I'm just interested in as many ideas as people want to share. So just briefly, and I'm going to move on, but I think you'll still be able to capture that in your phone if you've got anything else you want to say, or just, send out an email or something. So, did I go past one? No, I just missed a slide. Look, like the manifesto, so where to next? Like the manifesto, there's no master plan for the centre of the public square. It's basically ready to go where people want to take it. I see a 3-level mission for the centre: policy and advocacy, pushing government to create the conditions to allow these models to grow, projects, running events like this that can build insights and test hypotheses and build up our civic muscle. incubations, co-designing communities of interest that could be active participants in the town square. So what can you do to help? For all those working in organisations, try to do something different. Most of you build lists either to raise money or on the false promise that social change is only a click away. Let's come up with new ways to use your networks to build influence and countervailing power. Partner with us to think through the ways you might do this. Philanthropy. Is there any money in the house? Yeah. I'm kind of a philanthropy repellent. I lack the skills, the will, if I'm honest, the faith that rich people should be funding our civic spaces. That said, if you know anyone, and for the rest of you, you're the most important person in this discussion, because here's the secret. Tech platforms and the media, here's the secret that tech platforms and the media and politicians rarely share. They rely on us, our votes, our eyeballs, our attention. And while it's easy to feel powerless, we actually have the power. So before we finish up today, I'd love any final reflections. That's where this slide came in. But bearing in mind with time, we can just capture those. Look, for now, thank you all for being part of today's discussion. I hope this gives you some ideas into the ideas, but also the ways we can make discussions a bit more fun. I'd also note that without knowing it, you've actually shared really high quality data with me through this discussion. You've told me how you felt at the start of the event. You've told me where you see the most value in taking my ideas. You've told me whether you think I'm mad, and hopefully some thoughtful reflections at the end. Look, I know we didn't get to many of the questions. Did we get many questions through, Will? How many?
15 odd.
Hey?
15 odd.
15 odd. So we will use them as an FAQ engine and feed them back. If you've got any other questions, that we just want to keep thinking this through. Finally, though, for those who want to continue on this journey, I'm really excited to announce that the Centre will be bringing Glenn Wheel and Audrey Tang to Australia next month. We've got confirmation of a National Press Club on August 16. So, road trip. So are you in? If the answer's yes, I ask you to do 3 things. Through your phone, subscribe to the Town Crier, which is our regular roundup of everything that's happening in our public square. Follow Burning Platforms. When we hit critical mass, we'll start running them as live town squares again, Lizzie. And work with us. I'll do weddings, parties, anything to get people thinking about rebuilding our public square. And look, just to finish, I actually think that you all got that last vote wrong. Of course I'm crazy and I should stick to my day job. But I want my day job to be working with these things, imagining, experimenting and convening. And yes, it is crazy, but so is giving up on civic connection to these corporate surveillance machines. That's what's really crazy. Thanks, guys.